welcome to the very first episode of the Josh and Friends podcast. I am your host. My name is Josh, and my first guest is someone who actually was the one who inspired me to do this podcast in the first place. We originally met in math class as sophomores in high school. It was one of those classrooms that was full of class clowns, and the teacher was so comically bad. It just made the room just one big chaotic mess. I don't even remember what I got as a grade in that class. It was like a C or a C minus. No idea. But what I do remember is the kid who sat behind me and was constantly poking fun at himself and was just so spot on with all his observational humor. He just made going to the class a lot more tolerable. Well, it's been nearly 30 years since that class, and I'll tell you, I still hate math. But to this day, I'm still super close friends with this guy, and he still remains one of the most thought-provoking and intelligent individuals that I've ever met. So it is my pleasure to introduce the guy that everybody wants at their party, the one who has a story for pretty much everything, and one of the funniest human beings that I've ever met. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lee Olson. All right, Lee. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you on. How you doing?
Hey. I'm doing well, man. Glad
Good.
to be down here in Arizona and joining you.
Thanks, man. I'm glad to have you in the studio. You look good. Have you lost weight?
I guess a little. But really, I just went out in the sun. That's the easiest way to make it look like you're not quite as
looking
fat.
good, man. Looking good. Well,
are you hitting on me?
Yeah.
I just got here.
I know. But hey, Lee, out of all my friends, I wanted to have you on as my very first guest because one, you have more stories that have happened between the two of us than anybody else.
We've done more stupid shit together than anyone else.
Yes, and no one, and two, no one tells them better than you. You're just a fantastic storyteller. So
let's not set the bar real high.
And three, you're just one of the funniest guys that I know, period. So
well, thanks, man.
Yeah, so I think this is the perfect platform for you to showcase your talents because you've always been the funniest guy that I've ever met. But I wanted to start out with a quick recap of how we first met. So how did we first meet, Lee?
I mean, high school.
We met in 10th grade. You know what class?
Mr. Moss.
Mr. Moss.
Class. Yeah.
Mr. Moss, yeah.
Yeah, the guy that worked at Hanford Nuclear Reservation back in the 70s when they were releasing all the radioactive iodine. That guy was a sharp guy.
Yeah, well, he was also a very monotone and boring, and my name is Mr. Moss.
No, he definitely had radiation poisoning at some point in his life. He could still do math. He just couldn't tell you how to do any math, which is a bad trait for a math teacher.
Yeah. Do you remember who was in that class?
I remember it was me, you, Gabe Brown.
Yeah. For some reason, I always remember. I don't even really see. You knew Gabe before that.
Yeah,
I
knew
didn't.
Gabe.
But I know Gabe was in that class because he was like one of the class clowns. He was like always screwing off in the back.
Yeah.
And I think Velasco was in that class, wasn't he?
I think he was.
And was Ethan in that class?
Ethan wasn't in that class.
Okay. Was John?
I don't think John was either.
Okay.
No,
so
anyway, it was like me, you, Gabe, Andy, and like the Ukrainian.
That's
girls.
what I did. Yeah. That was on my list. I was like, and the crazy Russian chick. All right. So, definitely one of the most boring teachers I've ever met, and he was so. Remember how he used to prepare for his classes?
Yeah, he would roll the overhead projector. For those of you who didn't grow up, in the 40s or whenever we were in high school, and I don't know. The overhead projector that had the clear transparency on the rolls, you'd walk in and he would roll it back. He would reverse it from the class before.
I wonder how many
like
years before this did he actually have that written all out? It could have been years, right?
Decades. It could have been decades. He could have had the same, it's math, so it doesn't change. He could have written that in 1979 and just rolled it back, and every time a new class, the bell rings, people sit down, and he just starts wheeling that thing, just rolling it.
And all he would do is he had a piece of paper, and then he had a pen, and he would point to it was the world's worst. It was the worst like teaching technique I've ever seen. Right?
No, it would be like he was making his own textbook on the screen, and then he was just pointing to it.
It was
he
so
didn't
terrible.
even read it to you. He would just point to the thing like you would just read the textbook.
It was so bad.
It was awful.
But So, and you remember, you already remember the Russian chick. So now I think the Russian chick was like in front of me. I think I was like in back of her, and then I think you were right in back of me.
I mean, I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember the seating arrangement. I remember vaguely who was there.
So how I remember this is because, so we would take tests and we would all just start freaking out because like no one was ever learning anything in that class because he was such a bad teacher. We were just laughing about how bad this was.
Right. And the test never had anything to do with what he talked about. So like he would hand it out and we'd all just look at each other and go, do you remember seeing this? And the answer is, of course not, because he never showed anyone. You can't prepare for something that he just handed you for the first time.
It was so bad. It was like comically bad. But so the Russian chick, she was very amused by us, and she would laugh at us because we didn't know what we were doing. Nobody knew what we were doing.
Right.
So I know that she was in front of me because she would turn around and I go, I don't know how to do this. I don't know. And she would just laugh and grab my paper and then she'd start filling it out because she's, a smart Russian chick and she knew math. So
there's a couple things to unpack here. Number one, this is the American school system. Maybe it's better now. I don't think it is. But people come here who know how to do math, and then those of us who were never taught math because we grew up in American schools cheat by looking at their math papers.
I wasn't even cheating. It was not like I was like purposely.
She just did your. Yeah.
She would take it and then she would do it, and then I'd be like, Lee, she's like doing my, and then and Mr. Moss, he would see it and he would just laugh too, and I'm like, wait a minute, Mr. Moss laughs? He's laughing.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was
do you think
funny.
He cared if we actually learned the math or not?
Clearly not, because like he was just pointing at it, like.
No, he didn't care. No.
So yeah, so that's when I started like, your sense of humor in that class, and you're just always just making jokes like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe our teacher gets paid for this, and the whole thing was like kind of a joke, and I was like, this guy's pretty funny. So
well, thanks. At the time it seemed funny. If I knew that my entire future hinged on whether I learned that math or not, I don't know if it would have been as funny. I might have paid more attention.
Yeah. So anyway, so one of the, so that's when you started opening up a little bit, and I found out that you had worked for the Mariners. So,
I did.
Yeah. So that was something that, okay, back in the day, how do you describe this? So the Mariners weren't like, okay, so that we're a couple years from the Mariners being the Mariners. Like this was kind of like the dark, gloomy days still of the Mariners. So the Mariners were not good. They were, how would you describe the Mariners like back, because this is what, 1991? This is still a few years from the famous 95 season.
I think the best way I could describe it is take a look at the Mariners from 2001 to now.
Yeah.
It was like that, except nobody knew who they were.
Right,
So
yeah.
They've only ever been how about this? They've been the Mariners the whole time, except like a 4-year period in the late 90s, mid to late 90s.
Right.
But yeah, at the time, nobody cared about the Mariners.
Yeah.
They played in the dingy Kingdome.
Sure, we just got Griffey, so that was like a spark.
That was it.
That was it. But it was literally the only spark there was. I mean, at that point.
Well, we had Ken Phelps at first until we traded him for Jay Buhner.
Ken Phelps. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but working at the Mariners was awesome. So what was your job there? So you were, what do they call it? A domer?
Yeah, domer. So I started there thanks to another guy who spent 37 years working for the Mariners and actually just moved down here. You met him last
really?
time.
Oh, wow.
Tony Pereira. So he was with the Mariners for 37 years, obviously not in 1990 when I started. But I had the benefit of having him be in charge of this thing, and he started with the Mariners when he was like 14 or 15.
And you lied to get that job, right?
No, I was 13. So what?
Do they hire 13-year-olds?
Yeah.
I thought they were just like bat boys and stuff like that.
No, so what happened was essentially my mom said, I was 13. She said, "Hey, you need to get a summer job."
Okay.
Okay. Well, what's the coolest job I can imagine? I love baseball. I'd like to go get some of baseball.
And you did not live close to the stadium.
No, it was, and I think that my parents, they're great, but I don't think they thought I was going to get a job there. I just opened the phone book and I called the Mariners, and I'm sure it was the front desk. And I said, "Hey, how old do you have to?"
By the way, back when you could just pick up the phone and call the Mariners.
Yeah. Yeah, you could just
you do that now. They're like, what, you want to apply for?
Right.
I'm sorry, you go back online.
Well,
and,
right.
And
But
you,
to be fair,
you fill out like an application or a whatever, like everybody else.
To be fair, I did get kind of similar treatment because it's just the poor receptionist answering, and I'm clearly a kid on the other line. And I said, hey, how old do you have to be a bat boy? Because that's what I thought I wanted to be.
Sure.
She said, oh, you have to be 16. I said, okay, and I hung up. I called back 30 seconds later. How old do you have to be a ball boy? Yeah, 16. Okay. Call back another time. How old do you have to be a towel boy? Is there anything? What can I do? Can I do anything for the Mariners?
Yeah.
And she said, how old are you? I said, I'm 13. She said, no, there's nothing you can do here. I'm sorry. Wait till you're 16. So I hung up and I sat there and I thought, there's got to be something I can do. So I called her back. I must have called her a dozen times in
Holy crap.
10 minutes.
Wow.
And finally she just said, I'll send you an application. So she mailed it. She mailed an application. At the top it said Domer. I didn't know what Domer meant. Domer was the group of kids who, they're all-purpose things. Now we probably wouldn't be able to do as much stuff. Back then it was sort of a gap between like the King County Union workers who worked at the Kingdome and anyone else who needed to get stuff done. So we would do crazy stuff. We'd be out at midnight driving these giant forklifts, changing stuff because they didn't want the union guys doing it because they had to pay them. But at 14, they sent me this thing, and they were called Domers because it was the Kingdome. So I went in, interviewed, and, I told my mom, hey, if I get this job, I don't know how the hell I'm going to get there.
Right.
And she said, oh, don't worry, we'll get you there.
Wow.
I'm sure she and my dad, they're divorced, but they worked together for me and my sister, and they both, I'm sure said, oh, he's not getting that job. They're not going to hire him.
Then you got hired.
And then I got hired, and to their credit, they got me there. And so I started there in 1990. I was 14 when I actually started there. My actual very first thing that I worked was the Paul McCartney concert.
Dude, that's amazing.
So, but the short version, I turned that into a long story, but the short version of what I did was you hand stuff out of the gates. It's hat night, bat night, whatever. And then as you're around there and as, in any job, you hang out long enough, you see other opportunities, you need to do other things. And I ended up working in the front office. I ran the mailroom, worked in the ticket office. Just did a bunch of stuff because you're there, and then you kind of see that stuff.
Now, were you actually present on the day that the famous tiles fell from the
roof? I
I
was on the field. I didn't see the very first tile
That's
fall.
great.
But I was actually
on the actual field when they were falling.
Yeah, well, so
didn't they fall in the stands somewhere?
They did. They fell right behind home plate, kind of on the third base side, and for whatever reason, I was standing next to Tony. And he was one of the guys that had to make a decision.
Yeah.
Are we going to, what's going to happen? Because at that time, he was, stadium development or something. I don't remember exactly his deal. But he was one of the guys that had to make part of the decision, and I happened to be with him. So we walked out there, and we actually saw more of the tiles fall.
Now, it's funny because when you just think about that and you're not in front of it like you were and don't know the scope of how serious that is, that's that could have killed somebody, right?
Oh, yeah. No, these were...
they're giant tiles.
When you say ceiling tile, you think of what you see in drop ceilings and whatever, just like this, quarter-inch thick.
Right.
These were probably 2 or 3 inches thick of really dense, wallboard material. But they were, 2 feet by 4 feet. They probably weighed 25 or 30 pounds.
Right.
So drop something that weighs 30 pounds.
Sure.
Off
building up speed.
Yeah, it was 250 feet. So Yikes, and when they came down, they crashed. It was an echo. It was a big deal, and so it didn't take really. From the field, there was a lot of people saying, "Hey, what are we going to do here?" But anybody who saw that basically went, "We're done."
Right, and just describing the stadium, it's funny because now if you try to describe the stadium, it's kind of hard to describe because it really was kind of like a dark and gloomy kind of place, big concrete. How would you describe that to people? It's kind of, because now you have that beautiful open aired stadium that's, industrial looking and very cool. And, even that's getting old, but still it's the Kingdome was revolutionary when it opened, but
yeah, it's hard for me because I'm actually nostalgic about it now.
Me too. Yeah, no, I am too.
Memories there, but with all that nostalgia still intact, that place was a complete shithole. It was a concrete crypt that closed out all of the beautiful Pacific Northwest weather.
Right. Especially for baseball season. And baseball season in Seattle is just, it's one of the best places on the planet.
Hard to beat. Yeah. And so, and it was just not designed for people to actually see what was going on for a baseball field. It was really designed as a multi-purpose stadium, but football, because the field is big enough and you can see it. But baseball, you kind of want to be pointed towards the plate and first base.
Right.
And it sucked. It was terrible. I mean, it was really awful. And all the seats were narrow and hard. And
oh, I know, because I have two of them out in my garage right now.
Right. So the Kingdome was, I mean, it's hard to overstate how crappy it was, because people today.
But I'm just in your same boat there, as far as like I loved, because there was so many great memories that I had there. I mean, I was there when Boz got ran over by Bo Jackson. I was there for, countless Seahawks games. I saw Dan Marino play there. I saw the great Rick Meyer play there.
I mean, God, I can't top that. I was just going to tell you about how
I saw Largent. All the famous, like, of course, all the Griffeys and all those guys. It's just I think I even saw. Remember when the Sonics would play there during when they were doing renovations?
They used to keep all the stuff, like the basketball standards and stuff, kind of in the bowels of the Kingdome. There'd be like sort of cubby holes.
Yeah. And I think I saw obviously Gary Payton and Sean Kemp and either there or Key Arena, but I think I saw Jordan actually at the Kingdome.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, right. So, but pretty much everybody knows about the demise of the Kingdome. Where were you when it actually imploded?
I was with Ethan in Mexico.
Oh shit! Are you serious?
Yeah, I think we were in Mazatlan.
Wow.
And we happened into some bar and we were drinking a bucket of Coronas, and we looked on TV and it was
no
on
way.
TV, and I just kind of raised a beer, and he's like, to the Kingdome.
Wow. That's like kind of like when the big earthquake happened in 2001. I was in Vegas and I was like, oh man, like I'm glad I didn't die in it, but I don't think anybody died.
You know what though? Like I had already said kind of my piece with the Kingdome.
I remember I went with you and we tried to take pictures of it,
and it didn't come out. It didn't
get any pictures.
Right.
It's horrible.
But it was also like I was torn between both, like all those things, because I guess I was a libertarian even back then, where I didn't want them to build a new Mariners stadium until the people approved, even as my livelihood counted on it, and they had voted it down. So I was kind of pissed off when they built the new stadium, and then when the Kingdome went away, I was sort of both ways, because I didn't want to see it go. I thought it was I never thought it was a good building. I had so many good memories in there.
Right, yeah. You're attached to the memories,
right.
yeah.
But then you see what's happening. You see Paul Allen has bought the Seahawks, and the Seahawks are going to get a rebirth the way the Mariners did. Because at the time, like '99, the Mariners were in full-on rebirth. They were the
I was going to say, and it's good. It's a good thing that you were actually not present for it, because the radio station I think they sent out like 3 different street teamers to do promotions for it. And I think it was on West Seattle, and I'm sitting there watching this, and it was kind of like your memories going down the drain, kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so when they imploded, they're like, you could hear the 3, 2, and then you see like the implosion, you see the smoke go up, right? And then the people that were around at the park that I was at, they were all cheering, and I was kind of like almost angry at them, and I was like. I don't know if I teared up, but I was like, wow, that's it. It's gone. It's fucking gone.
Even thinking about that now, like I get a little bit of a chill, just because it's like, man, I spent so much of my youth there. I spent I didn't miss a Mariners game for 5.5 years.
Right.
And I was in that stadium in the middle of the night. Like we used to do these conversions where the Seahawks would have to switch their gear out, and we'd have to put ours in, and vice versa. And that was a gigantic undertaking, and I don't know why 15 and 16-year-olds were there to do it.
Right.
But it was our job, and it was in the middle of the night, and we would have to go do it. And we had, man, there were so many cool things. Like we'd have, here's a hint for anybody that ever didn't know enough about the Kingdome. Everything in that dingy, crappy place was held together with duct tape.
That's scary.
I personally went to Home Depot and bought a pallet of duct tape for the Mariners 1 year, and it lasted half a year.
Oh my God! What?
A pallet.
What are they taping?
Everything.
Oh God!
Everything.
Cracks and.
It was so for the Mariners, it was all the seat covers, because they had to have seat covers because nobody showed up and they didn't want to have these big orange seats. Right. So they covered all the seats in the 300 or in right field 300 level, and we taped those up. All the standings banners, tape. Duct tape. Everything was duct tape. I'm not exaggerating at all. I bought a pallet of duct tape, and it lasted half a season.
That is so nuts.
So when we would do these conversions, we'd pull all that stuff down, And of course you end up with big tape balls.
Yeah.
Man, we had some epic tape ball fights where, you'd see somebody down on the field, and you just start pelting them with these, and, you can make a basketball size.
Right.
Yeah. So, I don't know, tons of great memories like that. So
that's awesome.
I was torn.
Now,
I mean, it was cool to see it go away because I knew it was coming.
Let's talk about some happier memories that took place there. So I know that, pretty much everybody knows, I mean, he's one of the greatest baseball players, period, ever, and definitely the most famous Mariner, but Ken Griffey Jr., and, I guess he was named to the all-decade team. Wasn't he the only one from the 90s?
He was.
That's crazy, right?
He's arguably, I mean, he's my favorite, so it's hard to say, I'm a bit biased.
Yeah.
He is in the conversation for the greatest all-around baseball player of all time.
Yeah.
And the fact that he came to Seattle and played in Seattle when Seattle was just terrible. I mean, they were terrible before he got here.
And he was having fun.
Yeah.
Like,
and he made
nobody
it
has
fun.
fun in Seattle.
He made it fun. Like,
Exactly.
everything about it was awesome. And he was so, so good. Like, he was so special at everything he did. So, yeah, I mean, being around
that was a fun time for not for football fans, like for as far as like the Seahawks. It was fun for the Huskies. It was fun for the Sonics with Sean Kemp and Gary Payton and all those guys.
Yeah, the mid-90s were a good time
for
everyone except
for the Seahawks. Yeah, exactly,
right.
Exactly. But so you have some stories about King Griffey Jr. What is my personal favorite is the van story.
Yeah, I mean,
I like the van story.
That's probably the one I like the most because I had a lot of interactions with those guys over the years and lots of weird, just being in the clubhouse and being in kind of places that they were. You interact with them, and now I'm 43.
Yeah.
Looking back then.
And what is he, 44?
Right. He was, I think he's 6 years older than me.
Yeah.
So but that's the thing is when you're there and you're as young as I was, you look up at these guys and they're giants.
Right. Yeah.
But looking back, you realize he started in the league when he was 19.
Right.
He's 19, 20. These are 20-year-old kids just having a blast and doing whatever.
Especially him.
Right. And so there was a lot of that sort of stuff where I was just kind of around for that. But there were definitely some interesting moments. One time, you asked what my job was. My job was just kind of to do everything. And I got a call from one of the community relations guys.
Okay.
A guy named Joe Chard. And he said, hey, can you come down and drive this van? The Mariners, all players at the time, I don't know if this is still true, had something in their contract that said they had to do like 2 public appearances per year.
Sure.
Like community ones at schools or whatever. And to make it easy for them, they did at least one per year as like a team function.
So they go to like a
school
or
school. Right,
okay,
right.
Right.
So they'd arranged and they had broken up the entire team into kind of groups, and they needed somebody to drive the van. Why they didn't plan for this, I don't know. I mean,
and I'm sure they can't have the players driving the vans.
No.
Because that's just would be not
right
acceptable on any level.
Right. And so I got this call, hey, can you come drive this van? Like, great. So, and it's like a big 15-passenger van. I said, fine, I'll do it. I get in, or, we're kind of milling around the van waiting to leave, and I have the van with Griffey, Buhner, Alex Rodriguez, Jesse Barfield, I remember him for some reason, Buhner.
Right.
Like, it was a big group of guys, and kind of the A, I got kind of the A group.
Right.
And we're all milling around, and Junior and I are just kind of talking, and somehow or another, he asked me for the keys for something, like, hey, can I say whatever? I hand them to him, I don't think anything, and he jumps in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, I'm driving. I'm like, dude, come on. Like, and everybody's starting to get in the van, and it's getting to be time to leave. And I'm saying, come on, dude. Like, I got called down here to drive this van. Just let me drive the van. You're not supposed to drive it.
Right.
It's like, no, I'm driving.
I could. It's funny because I could totally see this with Griffey.
Yeah, no, he just jumped in and he goes, I'm driving. And
plus with a guy like Griffey, too, like, I mean, what's that famous story that his dad said something about Griffey, like, you're like, man, like you need to control your son. Like, I mean, Jesus, like he pretty much does whatever he wants. And then his dad, what did his dad say? He's like, well, if you saw someone swing like that,
you let him
do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, like, I think he had like hit a ball through his window or something. Yeah, but that's kind of apropos because Junior and a lot of those guys, they're used to getting what they want.
Right.
Like
right.
very few times in their life have they heard no.
And that's where Lee comes in.
Well, yeah, because I was kind of pissed. I was like,
yeah.
And so it's good natured, at first, and I'm kind of saying, hey, man, you got a pretty cool job.
Right.
Like, your job is pretty cool. My job sucks compared to yours. Could you please
give me this?
Could you please
Can I just have
least
this?
let me do my job instead of watch you do my job and then watch you do the coolest job on the planet? And he's like, no, I'm driving. And by this time we're kind of waiting, and I turn around and I look at Joe, and I'm like, Joe, what do you want me to do? And he's looking at his watch. He says, Lee, we got to go. Oh, so we let Junior drive. So Junior drives. I'm in the passenger seat.
No way.
And he's talking the whole time, just John, whatever, and talking about how he wants, hey, Joe, you going to take us to lunch afterwards? Let's go to Benihana. Let's, hey, I'm hungry. Once we get done with this, let's go. I'm super hungry, and that's kind of, and the whole time I'm just sitting there kind of fuming in the passenger seat. And so he gets out of the van and hands me the keys, and they go inside and do their thing. And I kind of mill about and I see him in there, but I come back out to the van and I sit down and I get in the driver's seat. And he goes, hey, get out of my seat. I was like, oh, no. You had your fun. Now I get to do my shitty job, and you're going to watch me do it. And so he goes, no, man, no, I'm driving. I was like,
now, when it came time for the next game, did you say, no, Junior, I'm batting.
Totally.
I'm batting.
Yeah, I totally should be like, hey, Junior, remember when you stopped me?
And there's been a change in the game. There's a pinch hitter, Lee Olson?
Yeah, he looks, he's wearing like a strange uniform. He looks...
He's wearing short cutoff sweats.
Yeah. I'm not sure what's going on here. There must have been some sort of inside dealing. Oh, we've just gotten word. Apparently, he and Ken Griffey Jr. have traded jobs for one at bat. Apparently, Ken Griffey Jr. did his shitty job for a couple of hours, and now he's going to do Junior's job.
That's awesome,
anyway,
dude.
so I was basically arguing, and he's starting to get mad. He's getting mad. He's like, come on, let me drive. And I was like, no, I'm not going to. And finally, and all the other players are there. They're all waiting, and everybody's kind of looking. They're all laughing at this, and he goes, "Hey, give me the keys." And I was like, "Dude, you told me how hungry you were. We can just wait."
You're like the adult. You had to turn into like the responsible adult,
right? And so hilarious. He kind of looks at me, and he looks back, and everybody in the van, kind of that pregnant silence. Just everybody's waiting to see what Junior does, and he's like, "Fine, fuck you." And he sits down, and before I even turn the key, he's like, "You're doing it wrong."
Oh God!
Like, oh God! Yeah, exactly right. So and it's a short thing. It was like this was like a school that was kind of up the hill south of Boeing Field, so it was only a 10-minute drive to the ballpark or to the stadium. So we start driving in, and he's jawing the whole time, just jawing,
just talking shit to you.
Just jaw, and he's also saying to Joe, "You really owe me lunch, blah blah blah. We're gonna go. Hey, let's go to Benihana's. Let's go wherever. Hey, we're going to go to Tony Roma's because it was the last place before."
Right.
And I just drove in, and I just turned to him and I'm like, "Junior, you can get your own lunch, man." And I'm sure it was awkward for everybody except Junior gets out and he's like, "You are never driving me again." I was like, "No, I'm not. It's fine. That's fine." And every single player walked by behind me and patted me on the back. Like, that was rad.
That's awesome, dude.
And then there was I thought it was funny. I don't know if anybody else did, but later that day, for whatever reason, somebody had sent Alex Rodriguez a bouquet of yellow roses. And so for whatever reason, somebody said, "Hey, take this down to the clubhouse," whatever. I walked down to the clubhouse, and the guys are all kind of there. Most of the time they're playing cards. And he was playing cards in front of A-Rod's locker with another player, Rob Ducey. And I start walking around the corner, this big, bouquet of flowers in my hands, and he turns and everybody kind of stops. And I start walking right for him, and I just recognized the opportunity. And I was like, "Junior, I felt so bad about earlier today." And everyone's looking at me like, "What is going on?" And I go, "Actually, these are for Alex." And I set him in his locker, just turn around, everybody goes, "Oh, God."
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I mean, it was just stuff like that. I mean, there was never...
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, where I'm probably leading towards with these stories. I know that you actually made the news for this next one in 1995 with the Mariner Moose. You used to do a lot of work with the Mariner Moose.
I did. Yeah. There's that. I mean, that's a weird, dubious honor.
You actually made, what is it? Was it Time magazine or is it?
I was in Time magazine.
It was Time,
and I don't know how to. I might. This might make you uncomfortable. I know it makes me uncomfortable.
Oh, okay.
You know how I learned that I was in Time magazine?
I don't know. Our buddy Brian?
No.
I don't know.
No. It was you.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah. It was when we were at,
Really?
It was when we were at
wow.
Green River Community College.
That's crazy.
And you said, "Hey man, have you seen this?" And I was
no
like,
way.
No. And you took me. They were a little bookstore. Remember their little bookstore or the little
dude? That's
store
wild.
In the sub or whatever. And you showed it to me. And this wouldn't be awkward, except the picture is of me getting off the 4-wheeler, and you can pretty much only see my ass.
Right.
And I was like, "You recognize me from my ass."
Of course, always.
Right.
Always.
So yeah, I was in.
So yeah, it was like the American League Division Series, or is it?
Well, that was the. What's that? That was the division series against the Yankees. That was, so it was.
So describe like what you were doing.
Part of my job was, I ended up being the handler for the Moose a lot.
Right.
Just because, it just worked out. I was good at it. And
it's like, I have these gloves on. I can't go to the bathroom. And he looks over at you. And he's like, well, Lee, you need to handle something. I have to go to the bathroom. No. Okay.
But it's more like people don't I think they don't have an appreciation for how often people in mascots get punched in the face.
Dude, those guys, I spent a couple days with the Moose I think this is like later. But dude, that guy, he would take off because we would do the prize cannon, and we'd have to meet down in his little den.
Yeah. Yep.
And he'd be like, he'd take off. He'd be all like, hey, and he'd be coming down the little walkway, and then
high-fiving people.
And he's like, hey, and then he'd come into the thing, and we're sitting in there, and he goes, and he takes off the hat, the big head, and he goes, Jesus Christ, holy Jesus, oh my God, and he's just like, he's drenched in sweat, and he's he's miserable, and he's like, fucking kids just nonstop punching me, like
they were, and the worst are like college guys, because I don't know, they're all drunk, and you see the big googly eyes, and like I definitely caught a few sort of mid-punch.
And dude, to be a professional, you have to just...
You do, and that's... So, unfortunately...
And those guys are like... They're in shape, dude. Those guys are all in shape.
So, the first Moose, which wasn't this one, was a guy named Tiger, and he was fantastic. I don't know the circumstances.
He left to go play golf.
Yes.
Clearly.
Yeah, right. Totally,
yeah,
yes.
Okay.
But this guy, the second Moose, was a guy named Brett Reinhardt, and he was like a college gymnast or something. Like, he was super, super athletic. And one of my jobs, aside from handling him in the crowd, was to drive the four-wheeler on the field.
Yeah.
And he would
the ATV.
Yeah, the ATV. And so he would rollerblade behind the ATV. And this was the playoffs in '95 when we had lost 2 games in New York. It was our first playoff appearance. We had lost 2 games of a 5-game series. Came back to Seattle and ended up winning. That's
crazy.
The whole Edgar
craziness.
Yeah. And this was, I think it was game 4 that I was out there towing him around, and it's playoffs, a little bit, more amped up, I guess. And maybe I put him into the wall a little hot. I don't know. But I put him in. And the plan was all along that he was going to let go and go slide into the wall, and that's how he was going to stop. It was a padded wall.
Yeah.
But he kind of lost his balance, and his leg came out from under him, and there's a little gap, like a 4-inch gap, and his skate caught, and he broke his tibia.
Oh God.
So and like this is everybody's watching. It's between innings, so it's not super loud. But, even with all the crowd noise and all that stuff, I hear him just go, and I turn around and I spin the four-wheeler around. He's just writhing there. And I pull the four-wheeler up, and he's just screaming.
Oh, my God.
Enough where the other guy, Brian Stites, comes out from behind the wall, and we hear him, and we're like, what's wrong?
Shit, dude.
And he's like, it's broken. It's broken. We're like, what's broken? He's like, my fucking leg is broken. And so, but we got to get him off.
Yeah.
Like now that the national audience, it's playoffs. We're out in left field, and they're waiting on us.
Yeah.
So we have to drag him off the field. We just each kind of grab an arm and drag him off. I pull the four-wheeler out. We lock the gate. Game gets going. And we're laying there, and we're trying to get him to tell us what's wrong because he can't really tell. He's in the big moose thing.
Yeah.
And he goes, get me out of here. And we look up, and all these little kids were looking down on us because it was in the tunnel.
Sure.
Kingdome. So we drag him further. We drag him up. We close the rollout door. And he's laying there. And I go down, and I pull his skate off, and his bone's sticking out the side.
My God, dude.
He had a compound fracture of his tibia.
Oh.
So I just turn to Brian, and I say, hey, man, you want to go get the medics?
Jesus.
Get the medics started.
Dude, that's terrible.
Right. But at this point, he's kind of calm because he's out of the public eye. And I'll never forget this. I'm sitting in the tunnel in the Kingdome. He's got his leg laying there, and I'm just telling him, hey, man, it's cool. Everything's fine. His bone's sticking out of his leg.
Yeah.
Like it's poking through the sock. And so, and this King County cop walks up, big barrel-bellied King County. And it's the weirdest things that stick in your head. He was eating an apple.
What the?
And I remember hearing the crack of his apple, and it kind of made me sick because I was like,
oh, dude.
And I was like, and he just walks up, and he looks at the leg.
Yeah, right.
Then he looks at Brett, the moose, and he goes, oh man, that's gnarly. You're not gonna walk right.
Oh, that's great.
I don't even remember exactly.
You're like in military mode when they say like, no matter what, just tell them everything's gonna be cool. Everything's gonna be fine. Like fine. You're completely fine. It's all good.
Right. So, and I just turn and I'm
You're
like,
to see your family.
and of course, then Brett looks and he's like, oh my fucking God. Like, oh.
Yeah, it's great.
And so he freaks out. Pretty soon, ambulance comes, takes him up to Harborview, whatever. The game goes on. Edgar, I think, ends up hitting a home run in the 11th or something. It was a crazy game.
Yeah.
We came back and won. I go up to the booth and I say, hey guys, Brett's at Harborview, and it's after midnight that this thing ends. And I said, I need to get a copy to show him, a copy of the game so he can see how it ended. And at this time it's, VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And so I take this tape. I didn't view it or whatever. I just took it and I ran up to Harborview. Went and said, hey man, you wouldn't believe what happened. This is crazy. I brought you a tape. I put in the tape, starts rolling, and immediately I'm like, oh shit. They sent me with a tape of him breaking his fucking leg.
Oh, that's great.
He goes,
Jesus.
He's sitting in the hospital. He's like, why would you bring this to me?
That's so
Why
terrible.
would you show this to me?
Jesus.
And I said, I didn't know. That's what I was bringing you. By the way, the Mariners won.
Wow.
Like,
Jesus.
yeah.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. So.
Maybe the physicians needed that, or I don't.
No, they thought I was just asking me to.
That's great.
Like, yeah, of course.
Jesus.
Go show him the video of him breaking his leg.
Oh gosh, awesome. God,
Yeah.
that's terrible.
So it was one of those things where I just, head in your hands.
Now, I couldn't let you leave today without bringing up the greatest story, in my opinion, that you've ever told about working at the Mariners, and that would be the famous Randy Johnson story. Now, for those who aren't familiar with Randy Johnson, how would you describe this guy? So,
he's a monster.
Yeah, he's tall and he's like slender, but he has like this. At the time, he had this like big mullet, big giant scary mustache. He would not smile. He was very intimidating when he was on the mound.
Purpose. And he's 6'10".
He was like crazy. Right?
He's not just tall. He was 6'10". He was the tallest pitcher to ever pitch.
One of the scariest fastballs ever in history. He would literally use that fastball and like back people up, hit them. Like I mean, he was crazy. Right? Scary.
Super and honestly very intimidating all the time because he wanted to be in the game. Later,
just to paint a picture for people that don't maybe not are familiar with him, he was that guy that has that famous GIF or that famous video of where he throws that pitch and the bird flies in front of it and it just explodes with feathers and it instantly dies.
Right.
So it's that famous. So anyway,
yeah. So
you have to tell the Randy Johnson story, and you gotta.
Yeah. So like I said, there were a bunch of weird sort of moments just being around there. I mean, I was there for thousands of games essentially.
Yeah, so you all in all, like you were there for like what 20 years or something. Working at the Mariners on and off. Like,
I mean, it's hard to say. Technically speaking, I'm still employed. I'm
but you know what I mean. Like as far as like going in, actually,
I'm
employee
number
paycheck.
58, but I worked from 1990.
You're employee what?
58.
58.
Yeah. So I'm sure they had many employees before they started numbering them.
Right.
But So I worked there from 1990 to 99-ish, and sort of went away to school in between there and whatever, and did some other stuff, and then came back in 99 and worked in the ticket office, kind of part-time and on and off for, I don't even know how many years. It's probably close to 20. I mean, I think my fiance likes to say I worked there 23 years. I don't know that that's accurate.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean,
well,
it's
right.
So a while.
Okay. All right. But anyway, so you're like still were you a domer at this point?
No. Yeah. So when this happened, I was a domer. Yeah.
Okay.
And so part of this comes with, this is kind of a Kingdome story as much as anything else, because the Kingdome was ill-suited for every purpose that they were using it for. And one of the things that they did is, so we had this little satellite office for our little crew, the domers, and it was inside locker room B, which the Seahawks used as a visiting locker room when they were there.
Okay.
So the Mariners had their clubhouse. Then there's this locker room B that was kind of right behind home plate. So like you were one door from walking out behind home plate.
Okay.
And we were in a little satellite office inside this thing, and they would have all kinds of stuff. There would be a green room there for most of the time, national anthem singers and whatever else. It would be kind of our staging area for different stuff. And then on Sundays, they would put up those curtains, just the pipe curtains, and they'd make it a chapel for players to come in because, obviously they're traveling, doing whatever.
Right.
Excuse me, they need to, have a chapel. So we're in there, and chapel's going on outside of our little office. And I see that the door's kind of cracked open. We're just in there, just having fun, being loud.
Sure.
Nothing particular, just kind of being loud. And it becomes sort of like I realize it. I realize, oh, hey, we're being kind of loud. I better close this door. and I go to grab it. And I've only got 2 or 3 inches to go, to shut it. And I start shutting it. And you know how things happen sometimes before your brain can process them? Like I go to pull it, and there's a little resistance, like right after I start, and then it just gets ripped out of my hand, just ripped. And your brain's like, what the hell is going on? And I look up, and Randy Johns, a 6'10", just leans in over the top of me and goes, "You guys want to shut the fuck up in here? We're trying to have fucking church." And slams the door and just rattles 2 inches from my face. And I'm like,
did you piss yourself?
I mean, I swear to God, it's just one of those, because it all happened so fast. You don't have time to process. Oh, it's Randy. It's Randy Johnson yelling at me. And they're having church. It's doorknob was.
And the way he says it, it's like so classic. It's just
especially
great.
Clearly, Let me be peaceful for you guys to have fucking church. But it was one of those moments where it just happened so fast, and all I remember is just going, "Oh fuck!"
That's so great, dude. I just love that story. And I should have almost like videotaped you doing this because the visual is just so great. But there's now a close second to that story was always for me. Fast forward a few years when they had you work in the mailroom. So you had some stories about working in the mailroom, and
you remember this shit. I don't remember.
I know. That's what I'm here for, man. I'm here to bring stuff up, and you would. One of my favorite things is like you loved talking about how your paychecks looked exactly the same as their paychecks, except one thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, so this is Jay Buhner's story.
Yeah.
So we got one day, for whatever reason, Jay was on a rehab assignment or something. He wasn't playing, but he still gets paid. And and he used to pick his paychecks up. So he wouldn't have them mailed. So it was always there. And somebody came to me and said, I'm in the mailroom. They say, "Hey, can you take Jay's paycheck out to him? We don't want to send it with a courier."
And Jay Buhner, he was one of the most famous Mariners back in that day, like Bone. He had the shaved head and the.
He did. He was iconic, and he was also pretty intimidating too. Yeah. But he was so hilarious, it was hard to take him serious.
You could tell, like all the commercials and stuff like that. He had a sense of humor, and he's like, he's good-natured.
Yeah, there were only a couple guys that were genuinely scary.
Okay, we'll keep the next one in line. I know where that's going. Okay, so. But anyway, Jay Buhner.
So Buhner, I grabbed Stites, Brian, and
big dude.
Yeah, and we go, not for any reason. I just thought, hey, it's a good day. Let's get out of the office and let's go do it.
Okay.
Whenever we drive out to Jay's house, and at the time he lived in Issaquah, he and Griffey were neighbors. So went to his house, met him. We're looking at his cars and whatever, and but before we had gone there, I don't remember if we did this in the office or where. We kind of worked the envelope a little bit so you could kind of see in there, and this is a check for 2 weeks, and it's like $400,000. It's like, or I think it was 287. Somewhere in my brain is the exact amount, but like we were looking, and we just. And the hilarious thing is, like you said, the checks are the same.
Yeah, they look aesthetically the same, and they're printed off down the same exact sheets.
We're all employees of the Mariners, and so you get this check. Jay Buhner says, Jay Buhner paid the order of blah, 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 $287,942.38.
Yeah, right.
My checks would say, pay the order of Lee Olson, $482.12, except they would fill the little box with the numbers.
Yeah.
In with stars.
Oh, God, great.
So it would say, star, 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 $482.37. Like it was, and of course they needed all those spaces because guys are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions or tens of millions. So but that story was just that, where it was a realization that, holy shit, I can't get much lower on this totem pole.
Right. That's gonna be tough. But now
it was cool. It was whatever.
Now, did you have rough for you, not for him. But
yeah, it was not rough for him.
But hey, that's what happens. If you have a talent that nobody else has, then you get rewarded for it, right?
That's it. That's capitalism. If those guys didn't generate that kind of money,
there would be. Yeah, it's like gladiators were taken care of back in the day, and
it's anything that generates money. Like I don't like guys like Alex Rodriguez, but that guy is responsible for generating more than he gets paid.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
you worked with A-Rod too. You have some A-Rod stories.
He was so new. He started.
Yeah, he was like there for what, like 4 years, 5 years, 4 years?
Yeah, he was a douche. He was a douche even back then.
Yeah,
I didn't have many interactions.
Okay,
with him,
well, I just remember, I just remember my favorite story about him in Seattle was when he was not in Seattle and he came back to play Seattle, and the upper deck had brought like all this Monopoly money
right.
and they were just making it like literally making it
Right.
rain and snow all over just with Monopoly money. And they were like, did they have to stop the game like at one point to like there was like so much money?
It was
like
definitely a good response. Yeah, he's a tool. I mean, but he's a capitalist too. Like,
yes.
hey, whatever. And he's, I mean, the cheating thing, the steroids. I'm sort of two minds about that because in the 90s, if anybody told you that they didn't know that steroids were a problem in the 90s and the early 2000s, they either weren't around baseball or they're just lying.
That's true, and that leads me right into the next story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So working in the mailroom, did you have any issues working in the mailroom?
So look, I'm not going to say this player's name. I'm not because like that's not fair. It's not fair to say negative things about people.
Okay.
But
can I tell people what it rhymes with?
No.
Okay.
No,
all right.
There were players who were.
Okay.
I mean, in that era, to give you an idea, there were Sharps disposal containers.
He was not one of the top
He was not. He was
10 players.
No, he was. In fact, even most Mariner fans would not remember he played.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But he was fairly imposing, and
you said from how you've described this, he was very imposing.
Well, yeah, but he wasn't,
to you.
He wasn't the biggest guy, because of this. And like, I'm not a small guy. I wasn't small then. Like, it's hard to intimidate me. And so there was a thing where the Mariners' office at the time was right across from the post office.
Okay.
And the post office was like a mixed-use building, had apartments on top. He happened to have the penthouse of the building that the post office was in. Now, I worked in the mailroom, and so he came to me, or I was in the clubhouse one day, and he said, "Hey, man, I'm getting fan mail at my house. It addressed to the Mariners, the P.O. box. So it should never have gone to him. But, of course, the people in the post office knew he lived there. And did I say his name? I think I said his name.
Oh, did you?
If I did,
we can edit it out.
Fix it in post. Anyway,
yeah, we'll fix it.
This player lived. He lived in the penthouse above.
Okay.
And he was getting his mail, and he was getting kind of pissed. He's like, "Hey, man, this shouldn't be going to me. It should be going. Can you do something about it?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll go ask." So I go over to the post office, and I ask him, "Hey, this player is getting mail at his house that's addressed to us. Can you send it to us? No mail to his personal house."
Right.
And I think it's done.
Okay.
I think it's done. I walk into the clubhouse, I don't know, a couple weeks later or whatever, and I'm always in the clubhouse. You don't really, it's nothing to be in the clubhouse for that. And I walk in, and this is the only time I can ever remember being scared. I just hear from afar, "Hey." I can't even do it right. "Hey."
So it sounds like a pro wrestler.
Yeah, just totally like, "Hey." Violent, like, I turn and I look, and it's one of those movie things where I'm kind of looking around me. I'm like,
yeah, like
me?
what?
Like
he can't be talking about me.
Yeah, the mailroom guy he's not talking to me. And he goes, "Get over here." And I like point, I'm like, "Me? Okay." And I walk over and he goes, "Hey, I'm still getting fucking fan mail at my fucking house."
Jesus.
And I go, "Yeah, I did what I could. I don't know what to do." And he goes, "Get it fucking fixed or I'm gonna break your fucking arms off."
Jesus.
And he just, and this is a guy who I'll let a little bit on. Prior to this, maybe a few weeks or whatever, he had been in the news for getting in a fight with Randy Johnson.
Oh my God.
And throwing Randy Johnson into the locker.
Jesus.
So like, it was one of those moments where I just, a million miles an hour, my brain went, you know what? This is the kind of thing where if he does something, most people think of it as, "Hey, great, I'll get a settlement. This is great. I'll get punched by a Major League Baseball player and it'll be fine." All I could think of at that moment was, it'll be my family getting this settlement.
You're right, exactly.
This dude's going to finish the job.
That's like stepping into the ring with Mike Tyson back in his prime. You're like, yeah, that sounds awesome, making $1 million, but wait a minute,
He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. Like this, and this was definitely the kind of thing where like he was, there were lots of steroids around in those areas, and he was that. Like, you remember the dude that we lifted weights with in college? Totally. Like roid rage, if you get it, like I'm no pharmaceutical expert. It's real. Roid rage can be real.
Yeah.
And this guy was definitely one of the guys that allegedly partook in that, and it was scary. It was definitely scary. It was, and to the point that when I left the Mariners front office, all my coworkers got me a jersey with my name on it and his number.
No,
and
that's awesome.
And it was one of the sleeveless versions.
No way.
Yeah, they gave me a sleeveless version because they thought it was so hilarious that he threatened to break my arms off.
Dude, that's amazing, dude. Without the arms. Did you ever work with any of the not work with them, but did you know the Peanut Guy?
Rick? Yeah, I mean, yeah, we knew him.
Now, my question is, could the Peanut Guy, like, again, let's describe real quick the Peanut Guy. So, would this guy be able to do what he did now, what he did back then? Like, there's no way, right? There's no possible way.
Somebody would sue.
I mean, this guy was nuts. Like, And he was
he was nuts.
That's fucking awesome. Like, the peanut guy.
The peanut guy. Yeah.
But he was like crazy. His accuracy, and he
Ridiculous
wasn't always.
And to describe what this guy was, he was just a peanut guy.
Yeah.
But he would wrap the peanuts up super tight, and if he walked by you and you tapped him on the arm, you were that close, and said, "I'd like a bag of peanuts,"
You'd walk down
he'd say okay, and then he'd walk away from you.
Yeah.
half a section away.
And this was expected, by the way. Everyone. Look, you weren't necessarily always paying attention to the Mariners, so Peanut Guy was like.
He was
in some sense more entertaining.
He really was.
You know, like he would go way down. And like literally he would behind his back.
Yeah, and he almost never missed.
No, it was crazy. I don't know how he did it. I still don't. Is he still alive?
No, he passed away in
Oh, really?
Gosh, the early 2000s. Yeah, he had cancer. He worked at the Mariners in the new ballpark a couple times, and they signed him to like an actual contract, because before he was just a peanut guy, a contract. I wonder
if there's like any like video. I'm sure there's videos of him, right?
There's
like,
video.
That guy's nuts. He's so amazing. Like, I don't know. It's just one of those things that's like a that's something that I just could never see happening today.
No,
because if he did miss, if he was off, which I did see him.
He did miss.
I know. I saw him.
He'd hand you a free bag, but he wouldn't charge you.
But that's one of those things where everybody else was watching at the time. You know what I mean? So like everyone's like, look, if you're not going to catch it, I'm going to catch it.
Totally,
you know,
right? And I think there's
and even if it did hit someone in the face, it's like, it's the peanut guy.
Look, well, and I think there was something too back then. We all sort of accepted a little bit of danger. I mean, that sounds kind of goofy, but like now all Major League Baseball parks are going to have netting from basically foul pole to foul pole.
Oh, it's so lame.
You used to be able to just put a warning on the back that says bats and balls might leave the playing field, be alert. Right. And that was enough because you knew you might get hit in the face with the ball, so you kind of paid attention.
I mean, I was a little kid. I brought my mitt, right?
Right. And so I think that's gone. So for any other reason, I think he couldn't do what he does because nobody pays attention to anything. And he'd be clocking people that are just walking by with their phones.
What about the Tuba Guy? Do you remember like the Tuba Guy?
Yeah, I mean, I remember Tuba Guy.
Again, I don't remember you're not working with him. He's kind of like was he a homeless guy? Or
I don't think he was homeless, but it's kind of weird.
But it was like those institutions of like the era of it was like, oh, I'm going to the Sonics game. I'm going to the Mariners game. It's like, okay, you're gonna pass the Tuba Guy. Like it's like the Tuba Guy's just in there playing like in front of the stadium.
I think that's actually what kind of the sport is about. Like all the sports is about that community.
It's kind of like a festival. Like if you're going to like
and you get to know those guys. You get to know Rick the Peanut Guy and the Tuba Guy and Bill the Beer Man.
Right, Bill the Beer Man.
Like you get to know these guys, and it becomes kind of a community. That's why I think that's why people like sports, and I think that's why the Mariners are struggling a bit now because they don't have people that care.
There's not like an identity like there was back in the day. Like even all the players were characters,
right?
Especially back in that era.
Yeah.
Like and a lot of the commercials like made them characters too. Like they turned them like those silly commercials.
Love these guys,
right. And
Edgar Martinez, it's a light bat.
Yeah, it's a light bat. Yeah, exactly. And Buhner doing
duck to Puyallup.
Yeah, all those guys. They were all like an institution in the city and. Yeah, you're going to a Mariner game. Say hi to the Tuba Guy. Actually, he got murdered or something.
Beat to death by a bunch of teenagers.
That's great.
Yeah.
Just like Tuba, like you can't think of like a less like intimidating or like threatening human being than the Tuba Guy.
There's just some dirtbags out there, and I mean,
or they probably didn't even know who he was.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they did.
Really, you're gonna attack the Tuba Guy?
Some people suck.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
But
hey, this is a really
light just to get a little bit happier. So some really good things came out of working for the Mariners. So you actually met your current fiance there.
I did,
and that's an interesting story too because like you, did she work in the Diamond?
Yeah, she did. So, I mean, to say that a lot of good things came out of the Mariners for me is a real understatement. It was I've built my life around it for the most part, even though I'm not still actively involved.
You have so many connections from there, and friends, and
it did so much for me starting out that young and having people who have confidence in me, like Tony, all of that stuff. But easily the best thing that ever happened to me was Jewel worked, I think, in the ticket office when I first met her, and I was in the mailroom at the time, and we just kind of were friends.
Yeah,
whatever. And we'd go to lunch together and whatever, and we kind of passed each other. When we got the new ballpark, she ended up as the head of the Diamond Club, or she was the, I don't know what they call it, concierge or hostess or what it would She was kind of in charge of.
That's when I first met her.
Right.
And then like I always laughed so hard because like she would invite you, like she was having a party. She'd be like, "Hey Lee, why don't you stop by and whatever?" And like, and then you bring me, and I'm like, we were like, it was kind of like. We're kind of like we'd bring beer to the wine party,
Totally.
you know, like
no, it was next level.
It was really funny.
It was really, and she's a little.
And
bit,
they're all kind of like they're all like kind of classier, you know. And we're just kind of completely, you know.
They were all classier, and also like at that age, a few years makes a difference. She's 4 years older,
right.
Which at the time, you know, when you're 19, 23 is a huge difference. So, but anyway, I met her there, and we just stayed friends for 10 years. I mean, 10 years. And anybody who knew me then knew I totally wanted to date her. I couldn't figure out how. I couldn't figure out how to make it happen. And we'd leave those parties and you're like, oh man, that chick, she's awesome. Right. I can't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. And then, you know, you go and you get some life experience and whatever. And for whatever reason, she called me one time and I hadn't talked to her in months, maybe a year, maybe longer. And she was coming back from a trip. She travels for a living. And she said, hey, do you want to meet me for a drink? I said, sure. Met her for a drink. And I was like, you know what? This is it. This is the chance. So I gave her a kiss. And that was it. So we started dating from there. And we've been together now 12 years.
That's crazy, dude.
I proposed to her on the Mariners field.
That's amazing.
Yeah, in the
and you guys always make it back for spring or not?
We've been to every opening day since. Yeah. We've got seats right down in front of third base. Who
has better connections than these guys?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely well taken care of. And I mean, we're Mariners family, you know, and they're our
That's
family.
Awesome.
And,
That's awesome. Well, all right, man. Well, it's been awesome, like talking with you. I mean,
Can't believe you remembered all those stories.
We have. Dude, I so much appreciate you coming in and agreeing to be my first guest, like I said. And we have about a million other stories that we could tell. So I'm going to save some of those for the next time that you come in, and hopefully we'll share more with the rest of the people that are interested in hearing the story.
Awesome.
In the stories. So.
I'll be happy to be reminded of my past.
Awesome,
I don't
man.
remember any of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk to you later.
Right on, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right, have a good one. Thank you for tuning in to the Josh and Friends podcast. If you have any questions or comments about today's show, feel free to leave a message in the comment section below. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, please share it with your friends, your family, maybe your neighbors. Spread the love. The best advertising is word of mouth. I'm Josh. Thank you for being a friend.